Good evening, everybody. How are you feeling this lovely, lovely Sunday here in the DC area? You feeling good? We enjoying the sunshine without the nasty humidity? Yeah. I'm still waiting for it personally. The spring has been very mild, very strange. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But until then, we are here to celebrate a really, really special book. And real quick, for those of you who are in the room, we are live streaming. So if you're going to be heckling, they won't hear you. If you are sending your adorations and declarations of love, they will hear you. All right. So today we are gathered here for something that some of you probably know really intimately, and maybe some of you are kind of like, I'm going to learn more. And for those of you here to learn more, welcome. And those of you who are like, I live this life, welcome. All right, so today we're really going over what does it mean to be ACE or ARO? How should I approach the challenges that come with being ACE or ARO? And how can I best support the ACE and ARO people in my life? You're going to hear the answers to these questions and more with the ACE and ARO Advocacy Project. Do y'all say TAAAP? Okay.
But you stretch out the A.
TAAAP. Remember that, guys. You have to stretch the A out. So, for a deep, join us today with TAAAP for a deep dive into the process of discovering and embracing your ACE and ARO identities. Empower yourself to explore the nuances of your identity, find and develop support networks, and explore different kinds of partnerships, while coming out to your communities and finding real joy within. So, we've got several of our authors / contributors up on stage here. They'll each introduce themselves, but for those of you who are like, okay, it's funny and all, but what is TAAAP? So, TAAAP is the ACE and ARO Advocacy Project, which is the largest volunteer-run org focused on helping ARO and asexual people in North America. The 10+ writers involved in this project all identify as aromantic and or asexual. They are primarily based here in the Washington metro area, though there are advocates all over the U.S. and the world. So without further ado, let's go ahead and give our guests a round of applause and welcome them. Some reverb. All right.
That's not what we want. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Nathan. My pronouns are they, them, he, him, and I am one of the founders of TAAAP. And yes, we have considered what other A's we could add to really lengthen that. I'm also one of the writers of ACE and ARO Journeys, and I'm really excited to be here today. And also I'm so glad. Thank you all so much for being here, for supporting us, and for potentially watching us live stream. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Emily Karp. I'm another one of the authors of ACE and ARO Journeys and another one of the co-founders of TAAAP. I'm also currently lead organizer of Asexuals and Aromantics of the Mid-Atlantic, and that's a local meetup group for the DC metro area. And yeah, I've been identifying as asexual for nearly a decade, and I don't know, doing a lot of blogging, activism, stuff like that. I identify as gray aromantic, gray panromantic, and asexual.
The testing the reader. Oh, hello everyone. I am Katie. I use she, they pronouns. I identify as ace and quadromantic, which, if you want to know what that is, you can ask us in the question and answer section. I have been with TAAAP since 2017. It was the same year I realized, okay, asexuality actually describes me. And I work in gender-based violence because I believe due in part to my identity and the idea of sexual violence being something more widely defined than the typical heteronormative and all the other things. Anyways, so that is my introduction. We can get started.
Okay, so I'm going to be asking some questions, and you two will be answering, please. So first of all, what is this book about? What is this book in front of us?
All right. Yeah, so this book is like a deep dive into understanding asexuality and aromanticism. And it's just like all about all the variety of ways that it might affect an ace or aro person's life, and helps make clear why something that a lot of people just expect to be simple and just something we don't feel is actually really extremely complex and difficult for even we ourselves to understand at first. And it's all about this identity development process and how we start to understand ourselves in a different way and all the things it can mean, stuff like that.
So first of all, the main point of this event for me is to show off this book that we've been working on for, I have forgotten how many years at this point. It is the
5-ish years.
Okay, yeah. Well, COVID happened during that time, so it could have been 20 years long ago. But I am not old. Just kidding. No, I'm serious. Anyways, this book is about, for me, obviously in the title it's about the journey, but it's for anyone who is like, what is wrong with me? And finding out through this book if you identify as ace, aro, or somewhere along that spectrum, even if you end up not identifying as ace or aro. This is a book that can teach you about a lot of different things that include romance, sexuality, trauma, medical practitioners, and how they relate with different types of sexuality and romantic orientations. And this journey is about, from that very moment, you're realizing you're different from the norm, which of course there is no norm, and trying to help you through the diverse paths that are possible get to the end goal of acceptance, of reveling in your identity, or just being at peace with your identity. So that is what I view this book as being about.
Thank you. Why did we write this book?
Most of us had to, figure out our identities without a roadmap and figure out what it means for our future and the rest of our lives. And we didn't have examples of what it looks like to approach your life. When you know now that you're asexual or aromantic or on one of those spectrums, and it's just this is a book that's really, the subtitle says it's a guide towards embracing your asexual or aromantic identity. So we're creating that roadmap that we wished we had when we were going through it. And it's we're explaining all the things that we go through and what it's like and what kinds of things we have to think about.
So I think there are many things that make this book special, but one of them is the diverse experiences that we are pulling from to create this book. We sent out a survey and received over 1,000 responses, and it's unbelievable how diverse the ace and aro experience is. And this book is special also in that it can give you the answer to a lot of different questions that you have. It can show you not only how diverse the narrow spectrum and identities are, but where they converge. Where are these similarities between our identities, and how can we move forward with any of the challenges that they are facing, and how are these challenges similar to other people's challenges? And where might something in your past have been related to your ACE or ARO identity? Why did you experience a specific thing when you were growing up? And how do you want to shape your future? This book is giving you, hopefully, these answers, or giving you the resources, the tools, or the information to find those answers. And it's also going to help you find a little bit of yourself. That's what I hope will happen. And even if you end up not identifying as ACE and ARO, it can help you realize a lot of things about consent, about how other people may experience their sexuality, their romantic interactions, just a relationship in general. That's how the ACE and ARO identity can shape those around us.
So I actually have a really different answer to this question than either of you. Our original intention in writing this book was actually specifically for what we call helping professionals. So that means people who are therapists, people who are counselors, people who are educators, people who have who work with asexual or aromantic people in their lives and might want to help them through their journeys, through their processes. Because all of us, everyone who's worked on this book, and I suspect almost pretty much every asexual or aromantic person has had an experience where they go to someone for help and end up having to explain more about their identity to the person they're asking for help with their identity. And that's not what you want. When you're when you're going to somebody to ask them, what does this mean? Who am I? How can you tell me, can you give me guidelines? Being told, I don't know what you're talking about, can you give me an introduction, can you give me a vocabulary lesson, can you do a slideshow presentation of what this identity is, isn't necessarily the most helpful thing in the world. So we wrote this book largely to use as a resource for people so that people who have no idea who they are, who are in the phase where they don't know if this is, they haven't even heard of asexuality or aromanticism. They just know there's something different about how they engage with other people. People like that need others to give them guidance. All of us had people who could help us. Most of us had found those people on the internet or at random meetup groups or whatever else. It might have been nice if we had had a professional to help us do that. So the original reason we wrote this book was to give professionals that kind of tool set.
I want to jump in too and just say that I'm glad that Nathan spoke up, because Nathan's ability to articulate this is one of my favorites, and I think Nathan should give their own answers every single time. No, but it is true that was our original intention, and I was really excited that was our original intention. When we started writing this, that was what made me addressed, and I don't know how many chapters in, we realized the first chapter was its own book alone. And so get ready for more books from us. And those will be more, hopefully, addressed towards those practitioners and those educators and anyone else who could use some more knowledge about asexuality, romanticism, consent, relationships, and how those can be more diverse than what we see in television and elsewhere in the world.
So the next question is, what makes our book special? Some of you know, because you've been to a couple of other events that we've done here at Busboys in the last month that are specifically on aspec meaning asexual and or aromantic identities and experiences. There's a whole bunch of different books over on that table that focus on aspec identities. There's a wealth of new nonfiction, it's awesome, coming out about ace and ARO identities and experiences. Why is our book different?
Yeah, I mean, One thing that's really different about our book is that we really focus on aromanticism for half of it, and all the other books are asexuality specific books. Aromanticism is its own thing. It's a separate orientation that doesn't have to be a subset of asexuality. You can be aromantic and not asexual, or you can be both, or you can be just asexual and not aromantic. And like, that's a big thing we worked hard to make sure was emphasized and really prioritized, because we need more books that talk about aromanticism and the specific experiences people have when it comes to breaking the romantic norms, not just the sexual ones. And there was also just a very different like tone of our book. I know because it's such a collaboration, we're not telling one person's personal journey. We're telling, Katie mentioned surveys that we got back from like, over 1,000 people. These are like questionnaires and responses that we were able to include from like 100 people that have different experiences with either asexuality or aromanticism. And it's kind of like, in a way, it's like I really like our, kind of casual like tone at times, but it is a little bit like a textbook in terms of like different sections and different like cover different topics that you could skip to that section and it not get lost, right? Like you can learn about coming out and skip ahead to that part of the book if that's what's relevant right now, either as a helping professional that you want to like help someone with that part of their journey, or for yourself. We also have lots of little sections about like advice that we, if you are an ally or you're trying to understand what we face, how to interact with us, how to have those conversations.
I mean, I like Emily's explanation so much that I don't even want to like follow up with what I had planned. But for me, what's important about this book, what's important to me, and what is special about this book is hopefully the tools that someone can gain from this book. If you are feeling invalidated by an educator, a therapist, a doctor, or you're just feeling invalid because of your own experience as an ace or ARO person, and you are looking around you and like, there's something wrong with me. This book hopefully will be the tool that can help you say, no, I'm valid. I'm more valid than you. No, I mean, yes. But in some ways, like, maybe it'll help you feel special. We bring such a vast experience that's so different than our normative perspective out there that, this book can show you some of those things, can show you why our experiences, the opposite of our normative experiences, can be beneficial to not only ourselves, but to the world as a whole. And I think that's really important, and that's something that is maybe not unique to our book, but is something that is really special about our book. The ability to feel validated, to speak to someone else in a way that understands you are valid, and when you are not feeling valid, you can open that book up and be like, this is why I am valid, hypothetically.
I was going to say the glossary. We spent a lot of time working on and making a very thorough glossary. Someday I want to write an entire glossary book that covers way more. But I think that honestly, the glossary alone is a pretty special thing about our book.
That was in my notes, but I'm glad that I mentioned it. Saved it just for you.
All right, so we mentioned before, we spent about 5 years working on this book from conception to publication in one form or another. So what was the most fun part of the whole process, writing, publishing, etc. for you?
I mean, I found it very fulfilling and exciting, and I knew that not just me, but everyone who's writing this book, it was really important to us. We're very passionate about this topic, and it's kind of unnerving that, what we're the experts, like none of us feel like an expert, or like I think, but we gained a lot of experience and learned a lot over the years of interacting with these communities, and it's not just about learning so much about ourselves, it's like we really understand what people in general who are ACE or ARO are going through, and it's really cool to get to share that with other people. I really found that very rewarding. The actual most fun part would have just been the fact that on many of our group calls to collaboratively write and line edit stuff together, that we're a very silly crowd at times, you know, we can joke a lot with each other and have a lot of laughing and fun along the way.
Gary.
Yeah, Nathan tried to be the playground monitor for us.
And for all of you who know me, you recognize that that is not a role that I am best suited for.
Wow, you made a good job of making that shape. Anyways, thank you. I have my answer, just, you know, right there. So what was fun for me was getting rid of my imposter syndrome. No, I still have that with me, but realizing how much that I do know about this subject. And believing a little bit more that I can be an expert, that I do know a lot about this, and that with this knowledge, maybe I can make a little bit of a difference. But what I did more was learning from my co-authors. I was going to say co-workers, but that's not the right word. They know so much, and because of, I'm using the word diverse a lot today, but because there's so many diverse experiences, I learned so much from these people that we wrote this book with. And I also loved writing this book during COVID because we could like meet up 2 or 3 times a week, and my social life was more active during COVID than it was before COVID. Somewhat. Anyway,
Virtually, we met up virtually, to be clear.
virtually. We met up virtually. Yes, I was living in Colorado. It was great. I had beautiful outdoors, and they all were stuck here in DC. Well, not all of them, but some were in Missouri, some were in Canada, New Zealand. Anyways, I did have a final point, but I don't think it's very important if I forgot it.
So I would say the most fun part was definitely, I was the main person who read through the responses we collected, and the responses to the questionnaires we sent out asking people about their experiences so that we could quote them and have a more diverse selection of experiences in the book. And I would say the most fun part was reading through those and saying, wow, these people from all over the world, from all different backgrounds, from all with all different, a lot of them are using exactly the same words using the exact same words to describe their experiences as I would. And seeing those similarities, and then also realizing how much joy people found in their aspec identity. That's the final part of the book. That's in I just picked out a bunch of quotes that were about joy. We selected a bunch of quotes that were about joy in being asexual, joy in being aromantic. And being able to look through these questionnaires and see that for all the difficulties that these identities sometimes bring, and for all of the struggle that sometimes we go through, there is this true joy in the identity in the community. That was the most fun part.
I do want to add that when we come out sometimes, or when someone learns about asexuality or aromanticism, often the response is, oh, I'm so sorry. You can't enjoy the most basic pleasures in life. And it's like, I think that we can be just as happy without those things. Actually, maybe more happy. I see all my friends in relationships. Sometimes I feel bad for them.
Not trying to dunk on mellow people here. Anyway, so with the most fun covered, what was the most challenging or difficult part of aspect of this process?
Probably making things thorough yet concise, finding the best way to write, because we, like Katie said, this was actually originally one chapter of a much broader scope of the book, and we realized how thorough we really wanted to be, and that this would be a whole book in and of itself. Like, it was we needed to cover so much, but even letting it be a whole book instead of one chapter, it was still hard to cut things down, it was still hard to say it in a concise way. Because it's like so nuanced, and there's so many people with different experiences, and how do you, in like one paragraph, summarize a specific thing that's different for everyone? So, yeah.
and you want to feature everyone's experience too, because it's just, so, I mean, for me, I'm so passionate about this, obviously, I helped write an entire book, but like, there's so much to say, there's so many people out there whose voices I wanted to give voice to, and actually it's not my answer to the question, but I just like Emily's answer so much I wanted to expound on it. And being concise is not one of my specialties, but that's my boss and all my professors in college. So my hardest, well, I think for all of us, having consensus was very difficult, especially with like 10 to sometimes a lot more than 10 authors. Just deciding, like title alone, the design, I don't know how many iterations we have, though I do love our title a lot. It really just kind of, anyways. But yeah, having a consensus is really hard. That was the hardest thing for me. Well, I think for Nathan it was even harder.
No, the hardest thing for me was being the playground monitor. There is an entire book that you all didn't see of footnote that was written in footnotes that one of our collaborators wrote about the journey to becoming a dragon rider and the process of understanding that identity, as well as many, many pictures where I would get ahead to another section of the book and I would realize, oh, there's a very large picture of a dragon here rather than interrupting our text. So having to be playground monitor, I would say, is most challenging, particularly because, as many of you probably watching know, that is not a role that comes naturally to me. I very much would prefer to join in on the fun. But, you know, somebody's got to do it. And then for our last question, before we move into Q&A, there is what takeaways do we want people to have from either this conversation now or from our book overall?
I really hope people leave this book feeling like they've gained a deeper understanding about themselves and their own experiences with attraction, desire, interpersonal relationships, engaging with or defying social norms, and that's like regardless of if the reader is on the ARO spectrum or if they're not. Everyone, I feel like, after reading a book like this, will like have done a lot of introspection over the course of reading it, and hopefully will have gained this like, you know, they'll feel reassured if that's what they needed, they'll feel empowered, they'll feel just like equipped as an ally in confidently and competently supporting these ARO individuals in their lives.
So I definitely wanted to review my response to that question because, of course, my brain would blank. And asked that question. And I have like these side comments, like no references to dragons, but definitely some interesting things that I was going to say. Maybe we'll see if I do say them. But what I want people to take away from this book, specifically the ACE and ARO and or ARO and or ACE, all of the above people will take away from this is the confidence that you can get to a place of acceptance and embracing, and that this book might help with that process, and it might not, though I'd be really sad if it didn't. And that where you're at is okay, and where you've been is okay, and where you're going may be even better. And it's also some other takeaways that there are tools out there for you. There are resources to finding other groups of ACE people, to finding how to talk with your therapist about this, how to come out, and these are in our book. But it also allows you to find even more resources just by reading our book. And, you know, you can use this book, you can come up to your parents if you're not out yet. You can be like, hey, Daddy and Mommy, I'm coming out. This is what you shouldn't say. Here are all the invalidating things we don't want you to say. And look, there are other people like me. That's a good thing. I guess I need Emily's help to speak now. No, I would.
I would say the biggest takeaway from this conversation now would be take away a copy of our book, please. But I'm sorry, I had to make that comment. Anyway, I would say the main takeaway is that these identities are complex and nuanced, and there's so much there to be explored, and that has yet to be thought about. There are a huge number of, as I mentioned before, asexual and aromantic books coming out about our experiences, about our identities, but there's still a dearth in popular culture of seeing our identities reflected, of especially in research. There are all of these different realms of the world where our identities, our experiences are ignored, and we are invalidated or just not seen as worth talking about. And so one of the main takeaways is, look, this book is not really that long. It does not cover even a fifth of what we wanted to cover in our original book, which would, yes, have been way too long. And yet there's still so much there, and there's still so much more to explore. So I would say one of the main takeaways is I want people to go from this book to learning more about our identities, to talking more about our identities, to thinking about, hey, let's include asexual and aromantic identities in a survey that we're doing. Let's include them in research that we're doing. Let's talk more about these identities. Let's include a specific track for that at this queer conference we're putting on. So that would be the main takeaway for me. And now I believe it is time for Q&A. There should be, Lori, I think, has a mic. So.
Just raise your hand and I'll come to you.
Were there any what were the surprises that came up throughout this process? Because it sounds like it was a long process, and between the many authors and the many queries y'all sent out to the community, I feel like any spectrum identities, you're going to get a wide array of things. And was there anything about the process or the responses y'all were getting that was surprising in any way?
For me, I would say I didn't know very much about the ARO experience before I started writing this book, because I've lived in my life my entire life, and I kind of took for granted that everyone felt the same way that I did up until this point, because I'm very narcissistic. And so realizing, wow, there are so many other experiences. People do experience attraction towards specific people. People do have the butterflies in the stomach. It's like an actual thing. It's not just a turn of phrase. I actually thanked in our acknowledgments, I thanked my dad, because I kept going to him and saying, hey, is this an actual experience? Can you explain to me what the alloromantic or allosexual person experiences in the world? And so, yeah, so the main surprise would be I have no idea how the rest of the world functions.
The only thing that surprised me is that our book actually got published, honestly.
Shout out to Jessica Kingsley Publishing in the UK. Any other questions?
Hi, and I think I called from Dexter on our trip to the African American Museum or something like that. The meetup there is really great. I didn't discover the term asexual until I was in my 50s, and up until then I vaguely identified as gay, but I didn't really have another term. And the problem was that my gay friends were essentially not coming on out people, but they just happened to be, and I wasn't. You know, I didn't understand what they were doing. I didn't understand why. So I didn't wasn't until 50 I discovered this terminology for who I was. So I guess I have sort of a three-part question. What about older adults who are coming out? What about people who are coming out of the gay community? Trying to explain to the gay community who you are. You know, like, thank you for being my friend for 50 years, but this is what I am. And how do you do that? And there was a third part, but I forgot what it was now. Because I think a lot of stuff, but basically those are, how are there a lot of males? That's the other thing. Are there a lot of males involved? It seems like there's more pressure on men to have a sex life, gay or straight, and I just don't have that. So how were the men's responses maybe different?
There is some of that in the book where we talk a little bit about intersecting experiences, intersecting identities in our roadblocks section, basically things that can make it more challenging to identify as asexual or aromantic, and those include intersecting identities, including gender, including age, also race and other ethnic identities, religion, etc. We are planning, one of the future books we plan on writing is entirely about intersecting identities with asexual or aromantic identities. I would say there were definitely some responses from men who said specifically that they felt a lot more, they had a lot more difficulty coming out and figuring that out. There were also, I'd also say that identifying as vaguely gay before identifying as aspec is a very common experience. I'm right there with you, bud. But there's also one of the books we have over there is I Am Ace by Cody Daigle-Oriens, who is an asexual educator and activist, and is in their 40s, 50s, and identifies as masculine, although non-binary, and only I figured out his identity I think 4 or 5 years ago. And he talks a lot about that, so that might give you some answers as well.
Yeah, I mean, we also have, as the identity development model that we go through and the whole like process, the first stage is like ignorance of the concept at all. And we do discuss how the older you are today, whatever your age is right now, the less likely you knew about asexuality at a formative time in your life and stuff like that. And the gender stuff is so common to come up and so relevant, and we don't know all the answers yet. It's part of why we need to do research in terms of, are there less ace men, or do they just not find our communities, and stuff like that.
They covered it. I could also say things, but I'll let someone else ask her a question. Ask.
Question. Okay, I'm gonna hit one over here and then I'm gonna head to the other side of the room.
So how difficult is it to get people in the medical community to understand the fluidity and the differences? And we're in a progressive area in Washington, D.C. So one would hope that that's something that they would at least try to become informed about.
It very much depends on the medical professional. My current doctor is extremely awesome and up to date and chill on all of and she's asked me some questions, but only as is relevant. She hasn't asked me to do a TED Talk for her, which I appreciate. I had a doctor who prescribed me my antidepressant medication and who would ask me about my libido every single time we would meet. And every single time we would meet, I would explain to her, look, this question isn't really relevant for me, and she didn't acknowledge that or change her list of questions. Even beyond that, there are doctors who there are doctors who do what is basically medical conversion therapy, which is prescribing hormones or testing for hormone levels, because they assume that there must be some sort of medical cause that needs to be fixed. There are doctors and there are therapists who do basically the same thing, both on the asexual and aromantic side. We have a pamphlet over there that discusses more of these issues, but it's a real problem, particularly because so much of the medical community is based on inherited wisdom and not just on what you learn in medical school, which doesn't really cover asexuality or aromanticism, but so much of it is just based off of what you hear from the older doctors teaching you, who are telling you what they heard from the older doctors teaching them. And considering the amount of clearly incorrect racist lessons that are still being handed down about how certain people don't feel as much pain and so shouldn't have as many painkillers, which is still a very common narrative that is still being taught to doctors. Considering that those still exist, on identities such as ours are very frequently pathologized.
Highly recommend picking up one of the ARO and ACE healthcare brochures that we actually have available today. Just take them over to your healthcare provider. You know, give it over to them. Even if you're not ACE, you can always help out whoever the next ACE patient is.
Yeah.
For free. It's free.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is there's a lot of very well-meaning doctors who want these pamphlets and would be happy to learn, but right now the way they're learning is through people hitting a pamphlet. It's really hard to change the curriculum of medical school or change the textbooks, and it's such a barrier to entry is so high. So if you have any advice, anyone in the audience, let us know.
And of course, that was part of the original intention of the book that we were writing. And so hopefully, when you give us that in into the medical profession, we'll have the book ready for you to give to those people in charge, right? Okay, thanks.
For now, there's a brochure.
Yeah.
The book will come soon, hopefully. Who is up next? Yeah.
So, this is sort of a pointed question, I have to admit. I was Nathan's very proud mother, and
You're not supposed to say that.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. So, could you explain the design of the cover of the book?
That was great.
So the reason this question was planted was because one of our co-authors unfortunately couldn't make it today, and they were one of the main designers. We had many people who were in our organization who are blessed with very excellent aesthetic and artistic skills. I am not, so I appreciate that they're there. And so a few of them designed the cover that we have, which is, thank you, Lori, for holding that up. So it shows a number of different arrows of various different flags going in all sorts of different directions. And that's meant to symbolize the different pathways that we take as asexual or aromantic people, and the way that those paths may go in different directions, may crisscross each other. The fact that they're arrows is a pun because unfortunately queer people love puns, especially ARO and ACE people, and arrow sounding like ARO is a very common pun, and I'll let someone else explain the flag designs.
Sure, yeah, we use very specific choices of flags that represent specific identities in the ACE community. So right in the center of the book is the main asexual and main aromantic flags. And right underneath the words ACE and ARO, you see the right flag underneath of it with the right colors. And then the other ones are, there's a specific flag for being allo ARO, which is being aromantic and not asexual. And there's specific flags for being on the gray areas of the spectrums and stuff like that. So we have a few.
And it was also meant to represent, we're all represented by this book. This book is meant to encompass all of these different experiences, not just one identity. And we're a very complicated community with lots of different identities.
Danny Z from YouTube says, what a lovely cover you guys designed.
I will pass that on to Gray and Lito. One of the things that I also very much appreciate, and I want to give a shout out, that the cover was designed, the main cover was designed by asexual and aromantic people. And while we had a freelancer, Nicola Powling, I think, from the publisher, helping us and making it cleaner and ready to put on a cover, the main concept of the design came from asexual and aromantic people, which we think was really important to highlight.
Any other questions? All right. Making our way downtown, walking fast. Oh gosh, everyone's looking at me now. Okay.
Keep singing it.
You don't pay me enough.
I gather one of the unique features of the book was the use of surveys. I'm wondering if you could talk about the process a little more, who you chose to survey, what you asked them, and what you think of the data that was produced, how quantitative and how reliable it is.
mean, we were very carefully drafting what questions to ask, and we did this before we realized that we would narrow the scope of our book. So we ended up asking a lot of questions, and a lot of the answers we're still saving for future books. But like, we really wanted to just reach out to as many ACE or ARO communities as we could find to get as broad a perspective, variety of perspectives as we could. They all are English-speaking communities. We wrote the questions in English. There are limitations, so we did. This wasn't a scientific, qualitative research study or anything. It was just a kind of informal questionnaire, but we did the best we could to, gather a ton of perspectives.
Also, to be clear, we never intended to gather it as data because it didn't go through any kind of peer review process except by ourselves, looking through the questions and looking through the way we designed it. We didn't, and we never intended to, and we never will, release information about any information beyond the quotes which everyone who answered the questionnaires gave us permission to use. So that means we're not going to ever release data about what percentage of the people identified as anything from we asked various questions about age range, race, other kinds of identities, so that we could better so that we could better use context to say, okay, we're using this answer because we need to show what someone who's over the age of 50, for example, would think about this specific topic. But we didn't use it as a data gathering. So we're not going to share. Again, we're not sharing what percentage of people identified as what. We just wanted to get a really good sense of a variety and diverse selection of experiences.
So no IRB approval?
No IRB approval, but we didn't need it because it's not a scientific study.
That's a joke for those of you with academia in the back of your head, a nightmare. So this study was more qualitative then?
Qualitative also means IRB. It wasn't a qualitative study. It wasn't a study at all. It was a community. It was a community information gathering. It's community story gathering. So it's not any kind of study.
You heard it here first, folks. It was a community story. What'd you say? Story? That was beautiful. Someone does need to write about that in academia. Community story gathering. All right. Any more questions? Oh, okay. These are going to be our last two, and I'm going to hit up right over here, and then finally up front.
So I guess you kind of threw this one out at me, but what is qua romantic?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Okay, so I am a language nerd, and qua is the word for. Anyways, so yeah, qua in French is what. The other word, the English version of this identity is WTF, romantic. It's pretty much what the hell is romance and why can no one define it? And how am I supposed to use a lack of something to define something else that is me? So as with all of the ARO ACE identities, we're having to define a lack of something rather than a presence. So, and because really no one can describe exactly what romance is, all of us are sitting here like, huh? Well, we at least, because I'm romantic. So that's what I define it as. I don't really know what romance is. I think I might be romantic, but I also might not be romantic because I absolutely love romantic films, not romantic comedies, just romantic films. So like, it's kind of an up in the air kind of identity. It's in the middle, but it's also anywhere along the spectrum, and I probably have gone on long enough. Yeah.
Many of the terms and our glossary says this, many of our identities are very purposefully nebulously defined because we all have our own interpretations and understandings of them.
No, this is the official definition.
How did you distribute, I don't want to call it a survey, but how did you distribute the questionnaire? Story, yes.
So first we put it on the social media sites like the Tumblr and the Twitter and the Instagram and the other social networking sites. We posted it to AVID, which is the Asexuality, Visibility, and Education Network, and is one of the main community hubs for asexual people. We posted it to ARO, which is the ARO version of that, the main aromantic community hub. We also sent it to the leader of every single community of asexual or aromantic people we could find. So basically looking up all of these people on basically any group on Facebook, on Meetup, on etc. that describes itself as an asexual or aromantic group. We basically sent a message to the leader saying, hey, can you email this to whoever email address you have and ask them to fill it out. So, and we also asked people to repost and reblog and re-Twitter, I don't do social media. So all of those things, and so that led to, again, over 1,000 responses, so, yeah.
So if the person who just tweeted the link for this entire live stream, yeah, I also don't know either, though I ran 2 social media campaigns as well, though it's on my boss. But for me also, like, I literally took the link and sent it to like my ARO friends or ACE friends and things like that, or people who I didn't quite know but I thought I should kind of. But yeah, so like we reached everywhere with us, yeah. Though I don't think either of my friends actually figured it out.
I will say one of the things that was that I'm realizing now, this would have been much easier if we had done it in a time of QR codes. We did it before QR codes were a thing, so we just had to send the link to people.
Ooh.
What is ALO?
Oh, that's a good question. So, the question was, what is ALO? So, allo romantic or allosexual means not aromantic or not asexual, and it's based on the word allistic, which is not autistic, and it's basically to keep from saying either not being aromantic is a default, so we don't need to have a word for it, for the same reason that we have the word cisgender, to not make, being transgender and other things, and anyone else the default. But there's also, because some allo-romantic and allosexual people objected to being called romantic or sexual, because that seems like a natural opposite. But, that's not all allo-romantic people are, or allosexual people are, so.
It would be like calling someone who's straight sexual, I guess, or just like sexual romantic, I don't know. Yeah, sexual romantic. You people who are allo out there, you are sexual and romantic. That's kind of what you do.
Yeah, that would be a not great way of phrasing it. So allo means basically not asexual or not aromantic. We usually use allo as a shorthand for both, if you are not part of the asexual or aromantic communities.
Yeah. And it's also a nice way to group together heterosexual and homosexual, bisexual, and all these other terms, but leave out asexual or whatever, say allosexual. Like it's a useful word, because we do have words like heterosexual, but that's a narrower subgroup.
I'd just like to add, it's nice to have a word that doesn't directly go to, it's normal. Very much staying away from that and going and describing what the supposed normal activity is. And all right, I think that's it for questions. Let's go ahead and give a round of applause for our contributors on stage. Thank you all so much for coming. For folks tuning in via live stream, this is the end of the road, but you can always get a copy of Ace and ARO Journeys either at a Busboys and Poets bookstore or online at bookshop.org. Support your local indies. And let's give one special thank you to Xavier and Maggie, our servers of the evening. And all right, and a big special thank you to all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming. joining us this evening. And now that we've celebrated everyone, we are going to go ahead and break, and the authors will be signing on this end. Give me just a few minutes, and I'll hop on the register over there and get you guys checked out. Thank you all so much for coming. Peace and love, and have a great Sunday.